Imagine being a high schooler behind bars. Imagine being a high schooler behind bars. Pretty scary thought. Minors cannot wait until they reach the age of 18 because they feel like that's when they'll be free, but in reality, they won't. So, minors really can't process everything or even think of the consequences or decisions they make. So how can they be really trialed as adults? Many people have mixed feelings about this because some believe that they have the capability to commit horrific crimes, they have the mentality to understand the decisions they make. But others argue that the brain of a minor is structured differently than adults. First, I will discuss how a minor's brain is different compared to an adult's, and how minors don't fully process their actions like adults, and how they shouldn't be sent to life in prison. So, why is it fair if the government can make certain restrictions or exceptions when it comes to charging minors as adults? There's a quote, but if they are too young to vote or buy cigarettes, they are too young to spend the rest of their lives in bars. So if they're too young to buy cigarettes or buy alcohol, how is it fair that they can spend their life behind bars when they did a crime when they were 16? So the actual valid and rational thought comes from the amygdala, deep in the brain and the frontal cortex, which led Yerflin, Todd, and other neuroscientists to suggest that an immature brain leads to impulsivity, or what researchers dubbed to risk-taking behavior. So minors think with the amygdala, which is like in the back of the brain, and adults think with the frontal cortex, which is the front of the brain. When dealing with emotions, minors depend on the amygdala and adults depend on the frontal cortex. So the amygdala is the one right here, and the frontal cortex is this one. So amygdala is a small almond-shaped region that guides instinctual or gut reaction, and the frontal cortex, which governs reason and planning. As you can see, this is why minors don't fully think of their actions but act on impulse. Okay, so the brain doesn't fully develop until the age of 20, or until they're in their 20s. So minors don't exactly process every action they make, they act on impulse. And Gregory C. gives his adult view after he was convicted as a child for a serious crime. A kid just does something whether it's an accident or intentional. I mean, personally, me, I was 15 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. I was still a kid. Kids do a lot of stupid things. The person I was when I was 15, I really didn't have any morals and didn't even know who I was at the time. I hate to admit it, but I was a real ignorant. So, I don't know if you guys heard of the Skylar East case. It's a case between three friends, and Skylar and Sheila had been best friends since they were in second grade. And so Rachel and Sheila ended up deciding to kill Skylar because Sheila and Rachel had like a love thing going on, so they felt like she was getting in the way of their love. So they wanted to, instead of telling her that they didn't want to be friends with her anymore, they decided to just kill her away. So they just ended up stabbing her, and then they just hid her body in the woods. So, like, who kills their best friend just because they don't want to be friends with them anymore? So, like, that kind of shows how minors think of a situation. They feel like everything's like the end of the world. They don't really like fully process their decisions they make. So as you can see, this is why minors don't fully think of their actions but act more like on impulse. They feel as if a certain emotion will hold them down for the rest of their life, and that kind of gives them a motive to act like recklessly. So in the United States, each year, children as young as 13 are sentenced to spend the rest of their lives in prisons without any opportunity of release. And Kids for Cash, it's a girl said how she hates the fact that I can't go to school, like that's your childhood growing up and going to school. So when kids are sentenced to life in prison, their childhood, like and their teenage years, go to waste. And Kids for Cash is a different situation because it was just a judge sending kids like for not as serious crimes to prison without really giving them opportunity. And that kind of takes away from like their teenage years of just doing, like, I guess, reckless things. So sometimes it's unfortunate when adults have to suffer in prison for the choices they made as minors. Like I said earlier, people can change and they should be given opportunities to be released or not even sentenced to life without parole. Some people obviously will never change, but the ones that do should be at least given an opportunity to start a new life. So there's some people that do go to prison and they do change over the years because obviously you're not the same person you were when you were 16 compared to 30. So that's why they should sometimes be released, but other people will never change and they should probably stay in prison for the rest. So adult and minors both have different brains and minors should not be held to the same extent as adults. So first I discussed how a minor's brain is different compared to an adult's brain. Then I discussed how minors act on impulse rather than reason and how minors shouldn't be given life without parole for a crime they did as a teen. Everyone was a minor at one point, and I'm sure this is the time you said or did an action you wouldn't dare do as an adult. So why are minors that committed more serious crime held to a higher standard than you or I?